Hello, my name's Ken West, and I was the Big Day Out and Rojo Rocket, I suppose, on the Central Coast.
Great, Ken. Welcome. That was going to be my first question. Just tell me about yourself.
Arts background, western suburb Sydney. Grew up in Cabramatta when Gough Whitlam was running around, friend of the family, because his daughter went to the same school as ours, and in my sister's year was older. So then eventually my sister went to art teaching, and then I went to, much to my father's horror, because he was a paymaster, got into fine arts that was to become COFA. But then it was called something else. It was called Alexander Mackie College of Advanced Education until they finally called it COFA, because that was who donated the money to start it, Alexander Mackie. It's funny about those things. And then that's where you basically met all the kooks, and in those days that's where all the musicians were, the artistic musicians were, because it was predominantly film. It was called electromedia mainly, the whole thing of it, sound, film, things that move, kinetics, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't really a painting school in that way. And that kind of led to the very early conclusion that the most talented artists had the least likelihood of surviving, because they were so focused in their art world that they weren't going to get anywhere unless someone helped them. So I gave up my idea of being a visual artist, partly because it was kind of unrewarding, I suppose, especially in those days, doing things like underwater ballet to electronic music in the mid-70s was a nice idea. But
cutting edge.
It was cutting edge. It was one extra dance company, I think, were doing it as well at the time. So it was, and the Conservatorium of Music, so it was a bit of collab. We were doing crazy shit. And so therefore I started being involved with musicians that of higher calibre, which led me to living in a squat in King's Cross helped a lot, so therefore I didn't have to pay any rent, and therefore I could exist on the dole after that. So I gave it 4 years of art school, and then I decided, seeing as I just wasted 4 years at art school to get a useless diploma, I'll give music 4 years, and at the end of that, if I can't make a living out of it, I'm going to have to get a real job. So I approached that as my next course and did everything from artwork, poster design, as the record label manager, agent, lighting person, loader, door person, driver, and normally on the same day. And poster gluer upper. I'd go out at 3 till 4 o'clock in the morning and hand billing in the shows. It was just 24/7 for no money. So that was fine, because I got no money in art school. I shouldn't deserve to get any money until I can prove that I'm worth something.
For sure.
And then by the end of that, during the end of that process, or really at the start of it, I suppose, the introduction to people like, because I was working with Ed Cooper used to be the lead guitarist in the Saints, they formed the band The Saints, and they played a lot with a band called The Birthday Party, it was the Boys Next Door for a little while, then it was The Birthday Party, which is Nick Cave. They did shows together, so I ended up doing the shows for both bands in Sydney, and then also touring Nick and that crazy world in my early 20s, 21, 22. And so I was their booker, promoter, opposed to, again, on that level.
Amazing.
And then I'd just start charging a commission on that. Then I started doing some other shows, did a show for the Sydney Theatre Company, just a one-off performances. It was all one-off performances, beginning, middle and an end, because my brain wasn't capable of sustaining it for
Sounded
long.
like you were very confident though. You plunged yourself into situations.
Yeah, I don't know how come that happened really, but anyway,
It feels like
I don't
it.
seem to have that confidence now. But I made sure I knew what I did my homework.
For
I
sure.
really did my homework. In those days, you had independent record stores, so you'd make sure you'd ring all the stores and go and have friends, and go down to what was Double J, and all the letterboxes were there, and so I knew all of the DJs or whatever they're called nowadays on
For sure.
talking heads on radio, and then that led to the whole thing of just kind of, and then because you're doing the doors, you know everybody. So the people on the list that might be reviewing for the daily paper or whatever, you go, oh, you're Bernard Zool, or you're so-and-so, oh, hi. And then you've got that rapport with them.
For sure.
So doors are great for knowing the audience, understanding what the audience is doing, how they're enjoying it when they turn up, how they leave, and also the people who are on the guest list and people that shouldn't be on the guest list, and people that turn up to say they're the person on the guest list and they're not. That used to happen
For
a
sure. So how were you naming yourself in those days? Were you a producer or were you a manager for artists? What would you say you were doing?
bit. Representative.
Representative. Okay.
I represented the acts.
Yeah.
And then Hunters and Collectors in the early days and all that stuff with it. And then the fortuitously, my father made a huge mistake and put $5,000 in my bank account so he could lower his pension. I mean, lower the amount in the bank, because they had a certain amount of money in the bank, you don't get the full pension. So he gave me $5,000, of which he didn't want me to waste. And then about 10 days later, I flew to London and got a train up to Manchester and met up with New Order, and
Wow.
when I was 23, and got that tour because it was Factory Records. So then I was the representative of all the Factory Records acts
Amazing.
in Australia. And the thing is, the weird thing about it too is that like the Nick Cave was the golden ticket, I suppose, because he in particular at that point in time, or the birthday party were in that point in time, were so revered as the most uncompromising artists in the world, which they were.
Yeah.
Stayed at his squat in Paddington in
Wow.
London.
Yeah.
His squat was bigger than mine,
Yeah.
except the stairs were missing, so you had to climb around the handrail to get up to the third floor.
Wow. There you
And
go.
the water was dripping down, just
Yeah.
like Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Just imagine like Blade Runner.
Gotcha.
That was the quality of the squats.
Yeah.
And so there was never any talk about money, so because nobody had any money and no one got paid any money, so the New Order tour didn't even have a contract till I said we need a contract for immigration. And then that just developed from there. But the thing is that I'd always put all the shows together and the visuals of it
Yeah.
and try and create that experience for the audience that was
Interesting.
much more than one act
Yeah.
and some shitty opening act.
Interesting.
I'd try and build those shows up into bigger and bigger, which eventually led to, as I wrote in an article, which ended up being there to me. But I've been through 2 recessions where at both times it's been over 20% youth unemployment, actually 25% I think in the first one, which was the early 80s, which I mentioned in it that I had the same dull day as Nick Cave, and he was on the front cover of NME the same week. Success.
Wow.
And I toured New Order that year, even though I was still putting in my dole form, because I did everything on credit.
Irony.
And that was about pricing and about knowing that there's 2,000 people who want to see this, and that's it.
For sure.
That's it. You're not trying to go wider than those 2,000 people. You're not trying to go to the mainstream. And eventually all of those acts crossed over into being much bigger acts. But in those times it was just a very independent scene that were hungry for the next thing. So I could keep supplying the next thing, and then sometimes it might be a bit bigger and you get 4,000 people over shows in Sydney and stuff. And
incredible.
And then built it, but I never really worked under my own name. So I created a company called Edward Zimbalist and Syndicate Proprietary Limited because, to be very blunt about it, all the promoters seem to be Jewish. And I thought Ken West as a 23-year-old isn't going to cut it. So I pretended I worked for Edward Zimbalist, secured the Lou Reed tour. Because Lou Reed's manager was the Rolling Stones accountant and very savvy. But he never thought that I was it. He just thought I was the rep that came over.
Oh, wow.
Found that out near the end. That was a good laugh. Like the second last show, he worked it out. It wasn't an Edward Zimbalist. But that was a bit late then.
Cheeky, I like it.
And then, so that was with my partner Vivian, who was managing Hunters and Collectors. So I just went through the process of stepping stone. And so, and then the second time the big recession hit was 1989, of which we were doing really well by getting the ticket prices up to an acceptable level without pushing it too far. Even to some points of doing unemployed discounts.
Wow.
Because you could do it through record stores. You have to show your dole card and you get a discount. And there was no internet, so there's no ticket scalping processes really going on. Or sometimes some bands would do things where they go, it's $10 to get in, or it's only $2 if you're unemployed, and they'd be shitting themselves thinking, fuck, what if everybody turns up's unemployed? We're not going to make any money. And it still only ended up by 10%.
For sure.
So there was a lot of goodwill that kind of went through there to try and help people manage some precarious times. So the second time kicked in around 89. 90 is when it really kicked, and then 91 is when the Big Day Out really was launched. And that was really I've got the Violent Femmes, who are friends, and I've done huge business with them before. I tour managed them around America for 4 months.
Wow.
Because they wanted somebody with an accent to tour manage them. For $250 a week, so you don't argue. You go, okay, $250 a week, I'll do it. I don't know if I paid for my own flight or not though, but it doesn't matter. But I went right through America, every city in America, with a band that were drawing between 1,000 or between 600 and 3,000 people a show. And really got to understand all of America, right down to Nashville's and Salt Lake City, because it was the biggest crowd because they swore. And the kids there are all repressed by being Mormons. So that was weird.
For sure.
And so when I was bringing them back, I knew that they were too big for, like I had to do Horde and Pavilion size shows, which is 6,000. But they were a little three-piece kind of skittle band, really, in a lot of ways. So I thought, well, let's add some more bands, and
that's how the Big Day Out grew.
It was going to be 6 or 7 bands, and then because I had the Violent Femmes and Nirvana were big fans of the Violent Femmes, they went, great, we'd love to play with the Violent Femmes. And that was through Stephen, a friend of mine who was doing some independent stuff. And it just kept growing. The band started contacting me, and then ended up with 3 stages, sold out 10,000 tickets, and then I got really freaked out. Because it went right under the radar. Like a week before, I think, when I'd already sold out, somebody told me that Michael Chugg was telling him it was going to stiff because there'd been no publicity. He said, but it's sold out. I went, oh. So then I realised the independent scene was no longer independent with Nirvana. The alternative scene was no longer alternative, and that the mainstream deep pocket promoters are going to try and buy their way into it. So that's when the Big Day Out had to be as big as possible, as fast as possible. So that's why it went straight to 4 cities, next year to New Zealand included. Because I was already doing that circuit. of New Zealand and Queensland and
Yeah.
things. So I knew the circuit, and I already had people in place as independent promoters there. And,
Yeah.
and then I had to teach everybody, had to tell everybody what it was, including the bands.
Yeah.
What's a festival? It's impossible for people to imagine that you have to explain to bands what a festival is.
Well, nothing was quite like the Big Day Out. Can you explain that ethos that you're saying to me before? The Big Day Out wasn't really for the punters. Like
No, well, there's two things. It was all about the art, and it was all about the bands. And the philosophy behind it really was, which became very obvious very quickly, is the Violent Femmes enabled me to have Nirvana on the show, which most people always get wrong in the trivia question, is that they think that Nirvana were headlining. They're actually playing before Yothu Yindi.
Okay.
So it was Nirvana, Yothu Yindi, then the Violent Femmes.
There you go.
Because I also believed in what I call as oral floss. So you can't go straight from Nirvana to the Violent Femmes because the audience is already too agitated.
Exactly. So give them a
So
clean.
you've got to have something to calm them down.
Love it.
It's the oral floss.
Yep.
I used Bjork in the same way,
Nice.
with Playing Before Rage Against the Machine, which she wanted to do, because we did that twice, 94 and 2008, and that, so it was like bands would ring bands, and that was the only way the Big Day Out was able to happen, is because it was the band would be telling their manager that they wanted to get onto the Big Day Out, and then the manager would tell the agent, we've got to get my band onto the Big Day Out.
Wow.
And so therefore price wasn't the issue. It was an issue, but we always had a comparable rate and things with it.
Yeah. It was this beast that was sort of powering itself, it seemed.
Yeah, but only, well, and in the reverse process is that the whole, the implosion of the year of Kanye, was that no one wanted to be on the show with Kanye. And
Yeah.
Kanye had already been, and Vivian, my business partner, really wanted to do it. And
Yeah.
because originally we were waiting for Prince to confirm, and I got told by everybody, including his manager, that you're dealing with the devil. He might say yes one day, no the next,
Yeah.
but I heard no, he really wanted to do
This
it.
was
and
Kanye or this is Prince?
No,
This
Prince
is
really
Prince,
wanted
yeah.
to do it, so we kept holding out for him
Yeah.
to confirm,
Of course.
and he didn't, and so then we scrambled.
Yeah.
And the same as with the fiasco of 2001
Yeah.
with Limp Bizkit, as we had Pearl Jam confirmed, but then they had 9 dead at Roskilde,
Yeah.
which was around the, when is it, August or July, and we were meant to announce in a month's time.
Yeah.
So obviously that was their experiment with doing festivals,
Yeah.
which ended up as a debacle. And then in our rush to go, oh, well, I saw Limp Bizkit, they were kind of funny.
Yeah.
Saw them in Japan, I thought they were hilarious, a year earlier. But in a year since that, things changed,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it got ugly.
Can you tell me about some band interactions, actually?
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything memorable that comes to mind?
Oh,
Just-
yeah, there's lots of things come to mind.
Lots of things. One of the most highlight points.
Billy, one of the funniest ones was, because it's about the attitude of the camaraderie and stuff like that with it, and one of the first examples of not quite getting it and paying a price for not quite getting it was Billy Corgan with Smashing Pumpkins in 1994. Turned up at the Sydney show with a stretch limo,
Okay.
and he got bottled by the rest of the bands and called a tosser.
What?
And then so he only turned up in a Tarago with the whole band after that. 'Cause he thought, I want to do a rock star entry.
Yeah, right.
But that might have worked for the fans, but it didn't work for
It didn't work for
the bands
Yeah,
backstage because it's all oneness. Had great situations with Muse and just the way the bands interact. You know, like Joe Strummer, for instance, was a really big part of 2001 '84 with Metallica because Metallica worshipped Joe Strummer from the Clash. So Joe, rest his soul, had this thing which I thanked him for, is that he'd go to the hotel bar on his own, and the word would go out that Joe was in the bar. Within half an hour, there'd be 100 musicians in there because they wanted to talk to Joe.
Oh my goodness.
Because he's the Clash.
Yeah.
You know, he's the real deal.
Totally. That's wild.
And I was going, oh, thank you for doing that, because most people wouldn't just go down there and sit on their own and have a beer and wait. But I know what you're doing because he's a social activist, and so.
Yeah.
There's just
so
tons.
many.
But I'll just say one of the funniest ones though is
Yeah.
the technological breakthroughs. Is seeing the heavy metal bands asking people like Prodigy how they get their drum sounds,
Oh, no way.
and having to show them how to
That's ace.
go. Well, what you got to do is you got to go through this, and they're going, you got to show me about this stuff, man. It's the best drum sounds I've ever heard, which
Yeah.
is true on Prodigy.
Prodigy in the boiler room. I'll never forget that.
Yeah,
I'll never forget that.
yeah. There's a lot of times with Prodigy. I went on a safari in Africa with Prodigy.
Did you?
That was pretty good fun.
Oh, I can imagine.
Keith Flint nearly got eaten.
By a.
Lion. So he went to have a pee, but he had his bright pink hair and
Oh my god.
stuff. And the
That's-
lion was starting to go, come on, Keith,
Yeah.
you look like a bird.
You look like a peacock.
Yeah. So that, just lovely people. There wasn't many arseholes, because if I heard that they were arseholes, I wouldn't put them on.
Well, that's what my next question was going to be about, because you would have got a lot of insight into fame. And I was going to ask, how do you think it affects people? And, like, what's your takeaway from it? Do you think it's, you know?
Well, not as much knowledge on the fame game. It's more to do with, it's like our son Oliver, who got sent home from school a few times for making up stories, because when he was hanging out with Bjork, or when he was like when he was 8 and things. It's like they didn't realise that that's what he was doing. Was like he wanted to get autographs and things. I said, that's uncool.
Yeah.
Just have a talk to them.
Yeah.
And then they'll open up.
Exactly.
But the thing is, with the fame game, that's why I only had 2 photographers backstage allowed, and they were
Oh, I love that.
Sophie and Tony Mott,
Okay.
and I paid for their flights and accom. They made their own money off the photos, but they were trusted. They just didn't, and people trusted they were the official photographers, so
For sure.
they could get all of these shots that other people couldn't get,
Yeah.
because the artists weren't scared of what was going to happen.
But you
to the
didn't have
photos.
capricious artists, like you didn't have artists with their writers. Like I heard Kanye wanted everything white, for example.
Oh yeah,
Do you
there
know
was a few funny things with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The funny thing I found is that it tends to be so just getting back to the fame thing.
Yeah.
It's a veneer that people put on. Mm-hmm. It's a shield, right? And enabling them to be around backstage, not having to put that shield on, is great. But at the same time, I've just seen the face change when somebody goes up and say, you're on in half an hour.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all of that,
it's
it's
gone.
like laser sight.
Yeah.
No, we've got a group, we're going to get in the shed.
I love
No,
that.
if it's the Chili Peppers, they sit down and they chant and
Yeah.
they bond, and then they've got to be on the one wavelength.
That's it. That's it.
And that's important with it, and it's about that adrenaline. I can't do it. I couldn't do it. But it's like this, even people like Phil Jamison from Grinspoon, who did the show a lot of times and stuff. I used to say to him just before going and say, don't fuck it up. Yeah. And that kind of became a trademark thing with people. But you're going out in front of 50,000 people
Yeah.
who aren't your fans.
Yeah.
They might like you, they might know of you,
Yeah.
and you're trying to win them over.
For sure.
And that back-to-back thing is what the essence of. They work really hard.
For sure.
There's no people out there, even stupid old Kanye,
Yeah.
They work pretty hard
Yes.
to be what they are.
Exactly.
And they have to, like Nick Cave still, even though all of the traumas and things in his life, gets up, walks the 50 metres, a bit like here, to his office and works all day.
Yeah.
He sees it as a job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's not the 80s. It's not like
No.
wild, drunken 70s stuff. No, the footballers took it all away.
Yeah.
No, all of that bad behaviour that bands used to do, footballers do.
They took it in their shoes.
That's what I said. There's nothing musicians can do anymore to shock because the footballers are already doing it.
Wow. Interesting.
So
what's the future of events? COVID has obviously been wild for everyone, 2020. What do you reckon? What's the future of events? What's going on?
it's going to be a hard task because obviously the irony of that is that most people that produce the major festivals now are kind of my apprentices. Because the Big Day absorbed everybody as well. Like anybody managed a band who didn't have a band on that was good, they were now tour managing an international act because I trusted them.
Yeah.
Because they were like band managers, they weren't like just a tour manager. And like Jess DeCrew, who does Splendour, was often tour managing bands on Big Day Out, in between doing other things, and so a lot of these festivals learnt on the Big Day Out and are trying to run these things. But the fundamental problem you have is that, as I've said to them time and time again, it wasn't easy in the first place. Like when I started doing the Big Day Out, getting permission to do these things was really, really hard.
Can imagine.
Because they just think you're going to run amok, you're going to destroy the neighbourhood. I had to, go to council meetings. I had to do reports to everything. I had to go and sit down with the mayor and discuss what could be done and not could be done. And I had even the first Big Day Out in when I moved it to the Olympic site, it technically got pulled the day before of going on sale because I had to bring together the showgrounds, SOPA, and basketball, because they were the three landowners in my site, and they had to agree on the deal. So I had to independently negotiate with baseball to pay them $5,000 for this and that, like that. And then I think baseball jacked up and wanted some more money. And then I got a call from the head of the showground saying, "Boy, you've got friends in high places. The Premier just rang me up and said, if you don't have this sorted out by the end of today, I'm going to cancel both your licenses."
Wow.
So you've got to have somebody with balls to go, I will sign off on this.
Yeah.
And that is the fundamental problem of any event.
Yes.
Be it Central Coast Council, be it New Zealand, be it anywhere, is some bureaucrat who's not paid enough has to sign it to say it can go ahead.
Totally.
So that is the real problem.
Totally.
So I think for a while, and it's about the risk, so I've said to, various events, maybe, in the earlier stages of it, maybe if everyone's got the COVID app, maybe if you're separated that you've got a certain numbered ticket, that's the only toilets you can go to so that they can kind of quarantine it. But the free range camping...
You think it's done?
No, it's not done. No, it's not done. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I've said to them, really, is that you've got to try and convince somebody to do a test event. And that's what it's called. That's what the Big Day Out was, a test event.
Yeah.
Let's put a test event in as a one-off and see who complains.
Yeah.
And because no one complained...
That's it.
Then it was greenlit to go ahead.
For sure.
The irony of, say, the old showgrounds in Sydney when I did the Big Day Out is that I got letters, handwritten letters from people that were saying they were the nicest, most well-behaved audience they'd ever seen, because they were worried all day that when they left they were going to ransack the neighbourhood. And I said, no, because they arrived in the morning, they're worn out, and they just want to go home. Because when it's cricket or when it's football, when they leave, they just go to the next pub and cause mayhem.
Yeah,
So
right, gotcha.
we got that fear of youth culture out of the way. But I think it has to really probably start it is a single stage. Maybe again going back to earlier time, single stage, maybe a 5-band bill.
Yeah.
That's a bit like this. You kind of have to use the sporting code structures of they're in that grandstand and they're in that grandstand, and so there's less cross-contamination. But then, of course, they all go out and catch the train.
Yeah.
So it's all smokes and mirrors.
Exactly.
But someone still has to sign off
For sure.
on that.
For sure. Does
They've got stupid things like drive-in
Yeah.
concerts and stuff like
It's
that.
just not the same.
Just
Maybe-
go away. The real artists, you might have noticed, the real artists have gone to ground.
Yeah.
The entertainers are the only ones
That are left.
that are freaking out, going, I've got to have a social presence or everybody
Yeah.
will forget about me.
No. Yeah. Absolutely.
Real artists are out there making art
For sure.
and going, this is my time off.
For sure. Speaking of real artists, you obviously, even though you don't play music, you don't play music
No, I
yourself.
never played music in my life.
But you love it, right? What does it do for you? What does music do for you?
Well, I used to have it in my head 24/7. Everything, note perfect. I just found that there were, as in a way, an art critic. See, I like all music except for country and western.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, all music, Arabic, anything,
Sure.
techno, classical.
What about Johnny Cash? He's country.
No, he's not.
No?
He's not country.
He's not?
No,
Not
no,
even a little
no,
flicker?
he's
Okay.
not country.
Gillian Welch?
He's a poet.
Okay, he's a poet. True. True, true, true.
Most of the country stuff's just
Yeah.
singing about hay bales. No,
Hunting, fishing.
no, I love jazz. I love complex jazz and things like that. So I've got a pretty very diverse understanding of all that stuff. So I became more of an academic in that way, as opposed to being a frustrated musician. I started to learn an instrument, later, and I just went, I don't think we need another bad musician. So
Totally.
I'll just go with.
I'll be the appreciator.
I'll be the facilitator
Facilitator.
of when I see something great. How do we make it live long enough? And how do you make it grow?
For sure.
And how to my modus operandi from the early stages of it was safe hands. Give the act to me, they're in safe hands, because I'll be there. I'll be there from the beginning, I'll be there till the end, I'll make sure they go home, I'll make sure the tickets are sold, I'll make sure everyone gets paid.
Amazing.
And so, therefore, the safe hands thing is why I ended up getting the bands sold me to other bands. And that's why the whole thing of
You built your reputation.
if you're just dealing with the agents,
Yeah.
they're selling them like slices of meat.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with the managers, nowadays it's harder because a lot of the managers aren't very managerial,
Yeah.
because they're not really savvy. So they'll fall for the money. If someone offers more money, we'll take that. Not thinking a long enough roadmap.
Yeah.
No, it's not about the short-term gain, it's about the
No.
long game.
For sure.
And so I think but getting back to that point, the thing is with the events thing, it's going to take a while. And even with somewhat a cure for it, it still comes down to probably the last one off the rank is the multi-day camp out, which is a real shame
It is a real
for
shame.
Splendour, and I hope that they'll be all right.
It is a real shame, isn't it?
It's a real shame, because
Yeah.
they're the most fun, really.
I know. It's a new world we're stepping into.
Because they stopped it with the car racing thing. There's no camping
Yeah.
allowed at it,
Yeah.
which is the whole thing of, is it Bathurst or whatever it is?
Yeah, okay.
So that's, that's the part of the problem.
let's talk about the Central Coast a little bit.
Yeah.
Why'd you move here?
Well, I used to have a house at Pearl Beach as a little one, as a runaway. My ex-wife got that. And so I ended up getting here. I like the Central Coast for lots of reasons. I like the fact that it's got a transient, what is it?
Nature to
No, there's thousands of weekenders here.
Okay.
So it's why when starting up, say with Rojo Rocket, when I started that up, that was to prove a point. It was a very expensive point to prove, but it worked out, luckily.
Yeah.
In that people wanted better. And there was enough people up here that if they wanted to could buy $40 shots of tequila and a round.
Yeah.
There was plenty, it turned out.
Yeah. Rojo went off.
Yeah, and it was to prove a point. And my hope for the Central Coast is that, like, I've got lots of plans to things that I'd like to do here, because now the new team at what will be called Shady Palms, which is the old Rojo site, because they've really got that, they want to impress the people that loved Rojo. The essence of the problem of the Central Coast is for too long it's been about the dying.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a bit more about the living.
Yeah.
Young people need to be encouraged to want to live here.
That's true.
You've got a city exodus that's going on, that they're going, wow, living in a shit apartment in Newtown's not that much fun anymore.
Exactly.
So it needs to really embrace tolerance of youth culture. It needs at least a really simple 1,200 capacity venue. That you could knock up anywhere, really.
Yeah.
I could build it out of containers in a week.
For sure, you just need property and...
Yeah, and I do shipping containers, just make one.
Yeah.
You don't even, instead of trying to spend $50 million or $100 million plan, they've got to do a fairly hoity-pollity theatre that no one in the music business will be able to afford to use, because the cleaning bill alone will be too much for them.
For sure.
Let alone if they, God forbid, they damage any of the chairs.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. It needs to be more earthy. It also needs to have, in a very internet savvy world, and when things go out, and everybody photographs everything, is that there's amazing locations here that I've looked at that you can do performances at. Everything from open sandstone quarries that you could put an opera in, to down at the Terrigal. I looked at the big grass hill, that whole area with the
Skillion around there.
With the football field and stuff. Hopefully I'll eventually write that up, but I really feel that that should be a 3-day and 3 night, generally a free admission, cultural, music, arts, lifestyle fair that, bus in parking, and it's complicated.
Yeah.
But you could do it. I even looked at, really simple things. Just put a big Jumbotron projection screen there and everybody sit on the bluff and watch movies.
Yeah. For sure.
Doesn't even have to block the road.
Yeah.
Have your outdoor cinema.
Yeah.
That's a COVID-friendly thing. But while they keep embracing big budget ideas that don't happen, none of the low budget ideas are being done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a shame, because the number of young people that leave here, on a bigger picture, it really needs to have a proper
For sure.
arts university style campus here.
For sure.
It was the first place they put the high-speed internet in, but anyway, instead of just moving all of the telecom workers here and tax office, it would be good if there was a utilised Gosford as a education hub.
Yeah.
To breathe life into this place. You can't just
Create
rely on
culture.
retirement homes
For sure.
and weekenders.
Create culture. That's
Yeah.
It feels like we don't really have something strong You know, you go to the festivals that happen and it's...
There's not one venue that can hold more than 500 people here.
Yeah,
It's insane.
yeah.
Need an Enmore Theatre, huh?
Yeah, like that's
Yeah.
all you need. I started the Enmore Theatre.
Did you?
Yeah, I couldn't get a venue
There you go.
to put on, so I
Yeah.
approached them. So he
Yeah.
said, oh, there's this theatre that's not being used.
Yeah, right.
And on short notice, I got the Enmore Theatre, and I can't remember, I put the first 10 concerts in there.
Wow.
Ramones, Femmes, all that stuff started it, and then that money allowed them to do the renovations, and then I'm the
There.
founder of, I've founded a few things. I founded
Yeah.
FBI Radio.
Really? There you go.
That was out of desperation because when Double J went to Triple J and then went national, it's one of the reasons also why Big Day Out had to go national, because they said we won't be able to promote things in Sydney for a while
Yeah,
because we're trying to focus on the whole country.
gotcha.
I went, oh, well, okay, well, I'll take the festival to the whole country then. That's easier.
Brilliant.
And then what happened was that then they were really, all of the local scene in Sydney was suffering because there was no radio station to promote. I broke the charter.
Yeah,
No, 25% local, 25% Australian,
amazing.
no, and then 50%, no more than 50% could be international music. It had to be at least 25%, or it had to be from Sydney and regional around there on the radio station.
There you go.
And did the first fundraiser, Silverchair played it, got $110,000. We bought a transmitter
Incredible.
because that was what we needed. We needed a really gutsy transmitter, which you can get it on the coast.
Yeah,
Everybody else had these pissy little, setups. And the irony of that is that one of the guys working on it was working at Double J, on our board. I've forgotten the names again, it's a long time ago, it was in the mid-90s. But said, we're going up against Koori Radio for the one frequency, they'll probably get it and we won't. So he did his research and he found that if he shunted one signal a little bit on one community radio station, one a little bit the other way, you could create 3. And so we created 3 signals to present to the government, and they didn't give us any money. They sold one of the signals for $110 million to, what's the Nova? What's the new one?
yeah, Nova, isn't it?
Yeah, 110 million. We got nothing because we originally broadcast on 96.9, which is their frequency.
Oh my goodness.
So you do all the work, don't get
Yeah.
paid, government goes and takes it.
Story of my life.
So yeah, so there's plenty of things along that way that you go, well,
For sure.
that the local thing needs to be championed.
Can we, because we kind of like
Sorry.
skipped over, let's talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
Rojo Rocket, just
Yeah.
briefly for people listening.
Yeah.
What was it? How did it happen? Just so people getting inspired of what the coast can, because that was an amazing venue. Just explain.
Well, that was a boots and all thing. Adrian, our friend, and who was doing real estate at the time, knew the place had been shut for 3 years, because I'd driven past it a few times and going, gee, it's a weird place. I don't know what it was. And that had been available. But he married a Mexican
Okay.
lady called Nikki. Lovely. Used to run Playa del Carmen nightclubs and restaurants, and moved to here, to Terrigal, which in Spanish means terrible, which her friends thought were pretty funny. It's spelt the same way. And is that she couldn't get a job because she couldn't speak. They said they wouldn't hire her at the restaurants because she doesn't speak English that well. And so I want to open up a restaurant. And I want to show them how it's done. And so we just, Kathy and the 4 of us, my wife and Adrian and Nikki, we just went, let's just do it. So I bought the property for a lot less than the previous person bought it for, because it had been shut for 3 years. Then had to put a lot of money into it, because it was only 100 capacity at the time on septic. And I had to run the plumbing all the way past the Bowls Club just to connect to the sewerage. So a lot of late night digging down there with the trench diggers. Build the whole new car park, the whole thing, just quite an expensive process.
Wow.
And then went, we need a hearse, because they had to have the 8-passenger
The hearse
courtesy
was-
vehicle.
Exactly.
And I went, well, Taragos only fit 7 because it couldn't include the driver.
Yeah.
So then you get those ugly 12-seater coaster things.
Yeah, you don't want that.
And they're horrible.
The hearse
So-
is brilliant.
I went, we need a converted hearse. And in Hornsby, there was a guy selling 3
Oh my God.
that had already been converted to seat 9
Yeah.
and the driver. You know, so because he was doing graveyard tours.
Yep.
And it was already blue.
Amazing.
It was like I didn't even repaint it. So that was called Sabrina.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the guts of it, to go, it was a build it, they will come moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I have faith in what the coast can be. And it was huge.
It was huge.
It was huge. And to be honest, the only real reason why it stopped is because Nikki and Adrian got divorced and they were the ones running it.
Oh,
Because they started off in Bali,
yeah.
took their eye off the ball here, and then my business was struggling with the big day out, and I just went, I've got enough trouble going in here, let's just shut it down, because I can see where it's going. It's just gonna, the memory of it, I didn't want to be damaged.
Yeah.
So I shut it down when it was already shut.
Yeah.
So we used to shut every year for a month.
Yeah.
And then reopen, which is what I believe you should do in the middle of winter if you've got a fundamentally outdoor fun place. It's really
Yeah.
not the, you know, but other people try to struggle through it and
Yeah.
rostered people off. And I just shut it, and I thought, well, what are we going to do? And that's when we went, we'll go the opposite way of Bombini now. It's going the opposite way back again towards the Rojo flavour, which will be a lot of fun.
So we'll just wrap up here quickly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you could make a phone call to the 16-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell little Ken?
Oh, Jesus. I wouldn't have listened.
You wouldn't
So there's no point. I had lots of noises in my head at 16.
Yeah.
So,
Still
but
got-
the thing is, okay, so I'll just say the fundamental thing of it is that, which you can probably tell, because I've got ADHD, and it was diagnosed when I was really young, and then not told what it was, and then was on medication until for about a year, because I was a bit crazy. And then when I went to high school, I wasn't, and I calmed, and you know, people realised I wasn't that crazy. I calmed down again, and then I went through this process and thing with it. Is that was my greatest blessing, to be undiagnosed through all of those things, because just to end on a sad note, Ritalin is what killed Kurt Cobain, not a shotgun.
Wow.
Because he used to have it without drinking any water because he's ADHD, and it burnt a hole in his stomach, which was the big problem in Australia when he was here in '92, which they had to cancel some shows. He wanted to go home, but we convinced him just to cancel Perth to try and finish off the rest of the dates on the East Coast. No, they went camping. And because of that, Payne ended up being on heroin
Wow.
to dull the pain from his burst ulcer in his stomach that he had to deal with
Oh
at
my
a time
goodness.
that you really didn't get a grip on these things. And that heroin addiction led to the ultimate conclusion.
My goodness.
So,
But your ADHD, you don't see it as a curse to you, do you?
no, I think it's a blessing.
It's a blessing, yeah.
It's a blessing. No,
It's the
that's
way
I
that
just said
you-
it was ahead of the curve.
For
Because the
sure.
thing is, ADHD, your brain's going all the time,
Yeah.
even sometimes when you're asleep. But so the only way you can calm it is to focus on things. Therefore, I found that doing things that had a beginning and a middle and an end as a project calmed my brain.
Oh, amazing.
So I just, part of the thing I'm writing up in the book, it's just called little boxes. I could just take a mental box off the shelf,
Nice.
focus on that box only, be it the artwork, the lineup, the whatever's going on, and then put that box back in the shelf mentally, and then I could stay calm. But if all the boxes are open, I'm stuffed.
Yeah.
So it's really a blessing. But the thing is, if you go, okay, I'm ADHD, I thought it was logical to have 6 stages of the music going at the same time. Because the more, I could sleep sleep with my head in a W bin.
Yeah.
With all sound around me and multiple sound sources.
Yeah.
And just focus on the ones I wanted to focus on. But now everybody's ADHD.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
I was just ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So
so it's a blessing, really.
And Big Day Out seems like it was just a representation of your mind.
Yeah, it
then,
was.
I guess all the stages.
It was, but it was like it never stopped.
Yeah.
That's the thing with it. It never stopped. And
Sure. So is that what
5 million people.
Yeah.
No, 5 million people over 22 years.
Yeah.
It was a big.
It's amazing. What an
And that was excluding the side shows.
Yeah.
Which, as Neil Young said to me, because we do the Big Day Out itinerary. I'll show you one in a sec.
Yeah.
But it's like, and it had the Big Day Out dates, and then each band would have their own itinerary, and the other shows the bands are doing, like Neil Young at the Entertainment Centre, was called the Sideshow. He's going, what the fuck is my show called a sideshow? Your event's a fucking sideshow. Mine's a concert. They're going, yeah, all right. Yeah. But he was a beautiful person.
Yeah.
But even his craziness is that he would going, what's going on? He'd come down and sleep. He had to come down in the afternoon and have a 1 hour sleep in the backstage shed before going on. I'm going, why? Why would you do that? He said, because he wants to go on stage angry. So I have to bash on the shed door half an hour before going on and wake him up. And he'd be angry.
Be angry about getting woken
because
up.
if he just turned up, he might be calm, and he needed to be angry.
Yeah.
He told me that too. It's like, oh, you've got your systems.
Exactly. We've all got our little systems. Hey?
Yeah. So that's a good example of
For sure.
what someone who's trying to keep an edge.
For sure. Absolutely.
How do you keep your edge when you don't have a complaint?
For sure. So maybe you talking to 16-year-old Ken would be the boxes on the shelf thing. Don't try open them up. Take one box at a time.
No, if I was listening to a 16-year-old self, I'd be going, Jesus Christ, you're listening to Kraftwerk and you're listening to Lou Reed and a few of the other people I listen to. You're gonna meet them and you're gonna work with them and they're gonna be your friends one day.
Aye.
No, and that's really freaky for me.
Yeah.
No, I'm really good friends with Ralph from Kraftwerk.
Amazing.
I don't do interviews. No, I don't want to do any interviews. And then I get a call from FBI radio saying, Ralph from Kraftwerk's just turned up here. I said, well, great. So he just heard that there was a community radio station and just decided to go down there and do a 1 hour interview.
Amazing.
But he wouldn't do any interviews.
No. There was something.
So that's the Germans for you.
Well, that explains the magic of your life. It feels like you always had right place, right time moments, I feel.
I think the most important thing is I felt who were the true artists.
Yeah.
And I thought, now sometimes I'd miss some. I think, and then find out like 2 albums later, I judged them harshly. But most of the time it's pretty much on the money to go, they're the real deal. They're really, really trying really, really hard to do something that's new and theirs.
For sure.
And it's not drawn from anything.
For sure.
It's drawn from something inside of them.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
Proud of them. I mean, you can't get much more crazy than Bjork.
No.
And
Sure.
she just survives in this ecosystem surrounded by incredibly talented people because they're drawn to her as well.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Iceland's a funny place.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ken. Everything you've achieved is just miraculous. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the
Yeah,
insights.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
chance to talk shit.